Lord have mercy, look at
And
how
welcome everybody to this episode of the Coming Home Podcast with John Allen. Today I have a very exciting guest. His name is Arun Siva, and he's running a business. It's a manufacturing and logistics consulting company, and that company is called W. Smythe Bates. Good morning, Arun. How you doing, man?
Good morning, John. I'm doing well. How are you?
You know, I got off to a rocky start. It's these allergies, man. It's allergy season is kicking my butt. But here I am. Here I am taking the challenge.
Yeah, finally the seasons have changed in Norway. You know, just like 2 weeks ago we had some snow. And
Yeah.
It's brisk and clean weather, so I'm all for it up here.
Yeah, no, I'm not one who complains about the weather, but I just throwing in that little fact that these allergies are starting to kick my butt. You know, we were talking a little bit on the telephone yesterday, and that was a very interesting conversation. That is actually the conversation that should have been the podcast episode. So let's see if we can recreate that little fountain of knowledge that was coming from you. You have a rather interesting experience as an American in Norway. How long have you been here in Norway?
I've been here just a little over 18 months. I came here September of 2018, so just about like around a year and a half. And
within that year and a half, you have been a busy guy. You know, yesterday we were talking about everything from Norway's immigration policy, you know, a rather selective immigration policy, according to what we were talking about. We were talking about international immigration, business opportunities in Norway, unions, jobs, some political science issues. Man, where do we start today?
I guess I could kind of shed light on the immigration aspect of Norway. It's very, very difficult. It's one of the most difficult, if not in the world. I sincerely believe that Norway, Sweden, Denmark are very selective in their skilled workers visas, as well as just general work permits. And initially I came here on a 1 year, what was supposed to be a 1 year skilled worker or workers permit, but there were some issues with the company that I was working with. On the end, when I was coming from America to here, I was working as a manufacturing engineer and a lead quality control systems engineer. But that kind of all backfired when I came here, and the regulations and everything have changed with the change in the government. And with that being said, I kind of, I'm still working, but I'm on I'm still in that gray area between student and worker. So I'm actually here on a student visa, and my situation has been completely different than most other students because I'm taking some graduate level courses here in Trondheim at NTNU. But with the overall, there's so many, like you said, there's so many stipulations if you're not from the EU. And that's the key word.
Yeah, because the European Union, they have a lot of agreements that are put into place where travel is pretty free between those countries. It's pretty open and very few restrictions. Education and things like that. You know, if you decide to pick up and move from Switzerland to Denmark, you can pretty much just do that as long as you're able to support yourself. And even then, if you
absolutely, obviously pre-corona, but but the issue now is Norway not being in the EU, but being part of the EOS and EEA. You know, they are still truly one of the last remaining countries that offer totally free education. You know, but the sitting government right now, they want to change that. They want to start introducing avgifter, what is that? Tuition.
Tuition, yeah.
Yeah, tuition. You know, like in the realm of they're following Denmark and Sweden and Finland that changed their rules and regulations in 2016, I believe. And now students from outside the EU have to pay almost 8 to 10,000 euros per year, in addition to living expenses. And I don't know why Norway, that has plenty of money in the in various funds and whatnot in the reserves,
Yeah,
would
but
even want to do that.
but do you think they're going to do that? I mean, I know there's talk about it, but do you think it will actually happen that the education all of a sudden is going to cost so much more than it does in Norway? Because one of the things that you hear Americans, especially some right wing, some Republican Americans, screaming out about the ills of socialism or what they define as socialism. Personally, I look at Norway as a democratic country that is leaning towards some socialistic tendencies. And I don't see the problem in that personally.
Absolutely.
And I don't think Norway, and as socialist people in the States will label the Scandinavian countries or Norway specifically as a socialist country as if that is something bad. But actually, the ruling political party here is quite far to the right, actually.
Yeah. And speaking upon that, I was going to say, with your first point, I'm a member of the International Students Union here in Norway. I'm actually hoping to run for vice president or the union development officer. And to keep things in perspective, the sitting government has tried twice, and with the help of our union as well as the Student Parliament, National Student Organization of Norway, with support from SV, Venstre, and of course Arbeider, the workers.
Those are three left-wing parties for those who don't know the basics of Norwegian politics.
Yeah, they, especially the AP, the Arbeider Party, they've been shutting it down at Parliament because they were actually very close, I believe, a couple years ago of implementing this in 2017, I think.
I'm sorry, implementing what now? Tell me again.
Implementing tuition. Originally.
Yeah.
So it's an ongoing fight.
Right.
And every single time they're trying to, slide this by, but we keep our guard up, we keep our ears and eyes open, and we see the signs. And like you said, going forward, when you have a country that's not under the strict thresholds of Brussels, being in the EU, like Denmark and Sweden and Finland.
Because a lot of people don't understand that Norway is actually not in the European Union. Norway is on the outside and has a whole string of agreements with the EU, but we're not in it. Yeah.
That's only for goods and trades because Norway doesn't produce anything, and that's one of the pitfalls of Norway is they don't really produce anything, or they're not able to agriculturally or even mechanically in my field. So they're starting to try to do that now because of Corona, but it's going to be interesting to see because they have the lowest of the populations in the four, other than Iceland, obviously, which they don't. I mean, they count, but it's Iceland. But Norway being at 5.4, Denmark has 250,000 more, I believe, and same with Finland, and obviously Sweden is double almost. So, it's just the thing with the oil, and then the consolidations and whatnot, and what the sitting government has done is absolutely appalling in terms of consolidating resources, communas, universities. I mean, the list just goes on, and I don't understand why. If you ask a lot of Norwegians, they talk bad about the U.S. capitalistic problems and this and that, but I think they're following the footsteps. And I think that's just purely hypocritical.
Yeah, they need to make sure they keep their own house clean. And I think things are great when it comes to those things now. But just the fact that they're talking about changing a system that works so well here it's for me, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, and it works so well because you have an educated, low populace that's high IQ, high value, high output. Right. And obviously you're going to have those. These problems with lower labor, menial labor, and where they're going to get them. But, they're attracting a lot from the Eastern Bloc, the Lithuanians, Poland, and Estonians, and Latvians who are, and I agree with that, because, they're in the EU and they deserve to, they're willing to do the dirty work and all that. But there's other issues within that system that I think are becoming more and more of a problem. When you talk about integration, you talk about language, when you talk about going further, there's a lot of people in defense of the Norwegian mindset. There's a lot of people that just use Norway kind of like a one night stand. You know, they're using it for the money and the good economic benefits, but they have no inclination of integrating.
Right. Not everyone who comes here has good intentions.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And that's where, you know, when you have a people like the Norwegian people, you know this very well. You've been here a very long time, and you have a Norwegian wife and whatnot. You know, you have a people that are reserved, that have been through hell literally for centuries, not the best climates. And for me, what attracted me here, not just being the outdoors and, you know, loving the outdoors and whatnot, is that I truly believe that there's something about a country. There's only very few examples in the world. John, you know this, I think. Singapore being one, Japan after World War II, after Hiroshima, Malaysia, and Norway in Europe. I mean, 50 years ago, this country was the poorest, or one of the poorest in Western Europe. Yeah. And now it's incredible, and it just gives you a little bit of hope about governments and humanity. And you know, like when you see these things, you know, it's kind of like, why can't other countries that have way more people, resources, skills, etc., can't do this? Yeah,
just imagine if, you know, the turnaround that Norway did in a very short time from being dirt poor in the first years, the first decade and a half of, after World War II, going from that, flipping it totally on its head and becoming one of the wealthiest. Many people will rank it up there as the wealthiest nation per capita in the world. And just think if that same turnaround could be put on some of the Central American countries, some of the African countries. Just imagine what kind of place this world would be. Imagine what kind of economy the world would have. So some of the people who are screaming out about socialism is such a big evil, disgusting thing. I question the depth of their thought. I question the depth of their analysis. A lot of people point at places like Venezuela, but Venezuela is not a shining example of socialism.
Yeah, and Norway is kind of in that realm, and a lot of people I've talked to, I've had, just conversations and discourses with, they're actually worried because, they think Norway's a one-trick pony, kind of like Venezuela with the oil and whatnot. So now they're trying to embark in like thorium and other types of energy. And they're trying to figure out, other than the locks, the salmon and fishing, commercial fishing and oil industries, what else can they bring to the table? And I think it was a smart move that they didn't join the EU because they have oil, and they voted that down twice, I think, in the 90s or the 70s even. But I think,
I hope they keep voting it down.
Yeah.
I don't want to live in Europe. I want to live in Norway.
Yeah,
big difference.
Exactly.
Big difference.
And I think, when it comes to, like you said, the ideology, and they put a lot of thought and effort when their constitution, because Norway's been under Swedish rule, they've been under Danish rule, and now they've got their own they're still trying to figure out their identity. And it's a big challenge here because where I live in this central part of Norway, there's a lot of nationalism. There's a lot of, which is a rise all over the world. It's real sad. There's a big rise of nationalism all around the world, but Norway doesn't seem to remember its roots. When they found the oil here, it was actually an Iraqi immigrant, an engineer who.
That's right.
Kind of set up how they should use the resources, the gold, the black gold, so to speak, that they found.
Right.
It goes both ways, man. And I just wish people could open themselves and their minds. And that's kind of, I think people can agree, it's kind of one of the things that kind of hinders progress here, is because you're not having an open mind, not willing to, engage in other perspectives because of your cruel past, and
Uh-huh.
you guys remember, I can see the pain, especially in the Trøndelag region, of a lot of the elderly folk that I see here that are, 60 plus. I
Yeah.
can see like they were there, they've been through the long,
The hard
cold days.
times, yeah. Well, one thing that I've never understood here is, as you mentioned briefly, there are pockets of that so-called neo-Nazi movement, that ultra-racist movement. There's different groups, not a lot, but there's pockets of that here in Norway, and that they would associate themselves with any Nazi type of ideology. I don't understand that, because Norway got jacked up by the Germans during World War II, to put it bluntly.
Speaking of jacked up, the city that I'm currently based out of, Steinkjer, is the poster child. The entire town was completely bombed by who, and the only thing remaining here was the train station. And it served as a hub, because before the communas joined together, this Steinkjer was the capital of what used to be North Trøndelag. So I got a little bit of a history from a friend of mine who's been here, but this entire town was completely bombarded and blasted to bits, and it's just it doesn't make any sense. Like you said, I don't understand the perception and the
bizarre.
Rational reasoning.
It's very bizarre. We're talking about a generation and a half ago, where those people, and a lot of those people are still walking the earth today with very clear memories of what they went through. And these people, I picture, a 20-something Nazi guy up in mid-Norway. What about his grandparents, who were alive during World War II and experienced all that suffering and all that destruction from the Nazis? My father-in-law was from Finnmark. He's a Laplander, as we call him in the States, Samisk, as they call them here in Norway.
Yeah,
and he was
Urfolk, right?
Yeah, exactly. So he was around 9-10 years old during the height of World War II, and he tells about how the Germans came and occupied their house. They had to make food for them. They had to sew their uniforms when their uniforms were ripped up, and when they evacuated, they were living in caves in the middle of winter.
Oh wow!
So
it's really a shame, yeah. Speaking about that, John, here in Trøndelag, it was there's been instances. There's two things I want to talk about, because it's interesting that you bring up the Samisk folk, the Sami people.
Yeah.
But there have been instances. They've been, obviously, during the German occupation, there was a lot of soldiers that did what they did with the local women here.
Yeah.
They've had barn, whatever, offspring, and then those kids have been, bullied and mobbing, and it's really sad to see, how this kind of transfers now. And I don't understand how people can still, not forget that period and still embrace it. And that's what keeps things going, right? That's why this word is never going to be non-existent. And the guy died, 50 years ago, and 200 years from now, we're still going to be talking about Nazism or this ideology, this belief system. But even what I was going to say is, Norway is so complicated because I had a good friend of mine here. He also is Samisk, but he, moved from the north down there. Or his family obviously settled in Trøndelag years ago when he was very young, like 5 or 6. And I think just like your father-in-law, he was, from Finnmark, and he, came down here, and he also got bullied, because he spoke Nordsamisk. And he, here there's a little community of people that speak Sursamisk, and a lot of people.
That's two different languages within just for people that don't know, that's two different languages within the Sami people of Norway. Yeah.
And the Sami people are similar, akin to like the Native Americans in America.
Right. Right.
Aboriginal, they're the indigenous people of Norway, Sweden, and North Finland, and parts of Russia. But it's really interesting how people are so, I don't want to say like tribal, but like, here it's like so close knit, and even within the country, I mean, he's no different. He's Norwegian. He's no different than anybody from here or anybody from, your neck of the woods down there. And there's this problem of acceptance. And,
right.
There's this big gap, and it's just really interesting.
Well, there's a lot of skepticism between the different regions of Norway. You're from northern Norway. You might be of the Sami people, and you come among these people down south where I live, and they look at you with a certain amount of skepticism. They look at you. And not everybody is like that. I'm not trying to say everyone, but very often they're looking at these Northerners almost as if they're some sort of a zoo exhibit,
Yeah. And then on top of that, so that's within the Norwegian people with white, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like we talk this way, but I'm talking about now, you're talking about foreigners, and especially foreigners of color. I had a little bit of a hard time. For the most part, my experience has been good, but I've dealt with a few.
What is your racial background?
Basically, I'm South Indian.
And you're from I'm sorry, go ahead.
What we call Tamil people.
Okay,
because India is a whole other ball game, and we're not all the same for people that don't know.
Yeah, that's a 2-hour-long podcast right there.
Yeah, from the deep south in India was where my mom comes from, and totally different ball game, and And luckily for me, there is an established community of Tamils in Norway, because a lot of them are from Sri Lanka and speak the same language. And obviously the deputy mayor of Oslo, she's Tamil, and I had the opportunity to meet her and her family, just real. And that's one of the things that I just don't understand. Norway is such a poster child for acceptance and peace, and they helped broker the ceasefire for the 35 plus year long civil war that we had in Sri Lanka. There was ethnic cleansing and genocide, which, George Bush arrogantly and vehemently opposed and didn't really know, because of course, what do you expect from George Bush? He's an arsehole.
It's not like he's studying up on the subject.
And
or any subject.
Labeled, but I got to give credit to Stoltenberg. Under his leadership, he brokered a ceasefire in Thailand, in Bangkok, and there's about 15,000 Tamils in Sri Lanka, here in Norway. I'm very grateful, obviously. And,
I had forgotten that Norway was instrumental in that ceasefire and that peace agreement. But that
2013, I think. I believe so, yeah. And there's still issues, but yeah.
Sure.
But but when I don't look that part, physically and facial wise, when I come here, I got labeled as potentially a refugee or like Arab or something.
Yeah.
And that's not what I'm about. So it's still.
I get labeled as a Pacific Islander, and that just blows my mind. It's kind of cool, actually, but that's not what I am.
The issue here is that there's, that there's labeling to begin with, but and it goes both ways, because if they don't know whatever data they've got visually, you got to make an effort, and that's why I made an effort to learn not only the language but the local dialect, which is a language of its own.
Yeah, it is.
And then I've been working my tail off. I've been working several jobs as well as other gigs, just to meet more people, and now the whole town knows me, and it's a whole different ballgame
now. Now your gig with the what is the name of that union? The International
Students Union.
The International Students Union. What kind of work are you doing there? Because you're actually trying to work your way up in the hierarchy there and become a leader in that organization.
Absolutely, yeah. And
what's that all about?
So it's the go-to union that represents all of the international students that are currently in and studying in Norway. We represent all the university. There's about 19 campuses that have chapters of ISU. There used to be 28, so now we're trying to increase the number of campuses that have this, and we serve as kind of a liaison between the students of the universities as well as the government.
So you're basically just looking out for their rights, making sure that.
Absolutely.
I would imagine you guys are getting involved in the whole aspect of student housing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a big issue because there's a lot of places where they don't offer it, and it's very difficult, to even open a bank account here and to do the whole rut. We also have to deal with, I've been lucky because I got a Futsals number. I got the 11-digit equivalent to, our SSN back home. But now, there've been problems with the UDI. They can only give them a D number, which is like a temporary kind of immigration number before things get really official and situated, and it takes time and paperwork, and and a lot of students, if they're here for exchange, it's one thing, and the only exchange students are coming from the EU, but the ones from not in the EU, the ones that are outside the EU, they don't have time. And
see, now,
6 months.
Yeah, some people may not understand the importance of getting a Norwegian ID number. When whatever your immigration status may be, whether you're a resident alien, whether you're a student, whether you're here on a work visa, whatever, if you are issued a Norwegian ID number, that is your key to getting into the social welfare system of Norway, meaning your medical care,
to the health,
access to medical care and things like that. And without that ID number, you're not without any rights at all, but you do not have the full rights of other people in the nation. So that's a big issue for a lot of students. I know some people who are caught in no man's land. Where,
we've had several students, exactly.
Yeah, where they're in student status, and they may also be allowed to work on a limited basis, but because they're kind of in that limbo between worker and student, they're not getting any benefits whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Scary. It's a scary thing.
Yeah, there even been instances because they didn't get the letter from Helfo, Helse Norge.
The health system, yeah.
They don't have a permanent fastlege, or what do you call permanent
doctor,
primary care physician for 2-3 months. So what happens if they get injured or something between August and October? Who's going to cover that? I mean, it's been very problematic and troublesome for many of the students coming from South Asia and Africa.
So you guys, the International Student Union, helps make that transition process a little bit easier for these students, helps them to get their foot in the door when it comes to medical coverage and other social benefits.
Everything. Any questions that they have, we do realize that it is a process. We've helped them, mitigate the paperwork and even opening bank accounts and apart from that socializing and getting acclimated with whatever city or whatever campus that they're in, doing that, and then also taking the issues that are common and bringing them and presenting them politically at the parliamentary level is what we're also really keen on now.
Do you see yourself building a political career here in Norway? You've met some people and you're involved in some activities and whatnot. Can you see yourself going that route?
If the people want me, hopefully, I would not turn it down. I mean, I do have a genuine passion of helping, and I'll give you an example. For me to learn this language in here in Steinkjer, I had to spend, almost 30,000 Norwegian, which is like, back then it was 3,500 crowns, but now the kroner's real bad. So it's like, 3,000 US, because I didn't have any options, and students don't have any rights for free Norwegian classes compared to like women that marry Norwegian citizens or obviously refugees and asylum seekers. And I've been really pushing for this, and we anticipate to take it to the parliamentary level because I've already talked to several politicians about this, and a lot of the students, I think they like that, and they supported my initiative of bringing this up, and that's just one small thing.
Yeah, because let's paint a picture now. You're a brand new. You've just arrived in Norway. You probably don't have that much money. You want to get into the society as good as you can, and a big part of that is learning the language. And then all of a sudden, they tell you that you got to pay $3,000 or $4,000 to learn the language.
Yeah.
That to me, that's jaw dropping. Now, I don't know exactly how things have changed or when they changed, but when I came here back in 2002, language classes were free. You gotta.
If you don't mind me asking, did you come as a worker or did you come through family?
Let me tell you how I came here. My wife had moved to the States. We got married in Lillehammer here in Norway and went right away to the States. Now, before we got married, she had done the process, which at that time, believe me, it was a lot easier than it is now. She had gone through the process to get her residency and green card and whatnot. Very easy process back then. We got married in Lillehammer, came back. We lived in the Chicago suburbs for about 2 years.
Which suburb? Hey, which suburb?
It's a little place called South Holland.
Oh, I know South Holland.
Do you? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I lived in Chicago for a little bit. Yeah,
okay. Yeah, and no bullet holes, right?
It's debatable.
Screw you, Chicago people, if you get mad for my little joke there. You guys know the bullets are flying. They know the bullets are flying over there.
I lived in South Jeffrey, Hyde Park.
Okay.
Not too far.
Yeah.
So I lived in the city. I lived in the South Side.
Yeah, I was right on the edge, right on the south suburbs there, South Holland. Actually, South Holland was a very nice place to live, actually.
Yeah.
So she came here. She came to the States. We lived there for about 2 years before we decided to move to Norway. If you go back a couple of podcast episodes, I go through that whole story of why we moved to Norway and how that happened. But I tell you, here's how simple it was for me to come here, get permanent residency, and get a worker's permit. We came to the police station, like maybe 3 or 4 days after we came. I went to some office. I don't remember the immigrant office at the local police station. I stood there for maybe 15 minutes while they took my picture. I signed a couple of documents. They asked me if I had a job or if I was planning on getting a job, and that was it. This was in 2002. That's how simple it was.
Yeah, so the kicker here is the reason why you got free Norwegian class, which still exists today, is because you were married to a Norwegian and you came here.
Is that still in place today?
Yeah, that's still in place.
If you're married to a Norwegian.
Yeah, and then that's the only way. I joke with a lot of people. The easiest way to come to Norway is to marry somebody here that is Norwegian. And that's not a good thing. I mean, and of course, as important as it is to learn the language, I found, and again, I don't know how the system is now, but so I signed up for these Norwegian classes. I went there the first day, and I'm like, this isn't going to work. I was in a class with mostly Somalis. There's 5 or 6 of them, and they were illiterate in their own language. They couldn't read or write their own language, so there was no reference point to get them to learn Norwegian. So the instructor didn't try to teach them Norwegian. They were out playing soccer all day long. I sat in that so-called class for 2 days, and I said, this ain't working, and I walked out. So I've had 2 days of Norwegian classes, and on the second day, I had my wife come in with me, and we went on this computer program there in the classroom so I could learn the grammar, the structure of the grammar. And that was it. That's all I needed. I took that knowledge that I was able to gain on 2 days, basically 1 day, and I went out and I started learning Norwegian on my own. Yeah.
So,
I got a little...
But that's not... No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, sorry. I was just going to say, like you said, here it was kind of similar. I was in a class with mostly refugees. And they only knew the Arabic alphabet, so they never were exposed to Latin letters, Latin alphabet system. So, but the teachers that I had were really great. Shout out to all of them here at Steinkjer Voksenopplæring. Really, really grateful. And they just pushed me, and they knew what kind of predicament I was in, and they really worked me with.
So they really worked with you and gave you the support you needed to learn the language.
Yeah.
Well, that wasn't happening back in the day where I was, and it's a shame. I turned out fine. Within 3 months I was able to converse with people. Shout out to myself for my language, for my language abilities. I'm very proud of that, actually. Yeah. But I'm thinking about all of the people who came before me and maybe are still coming there, and it's a substandard system. At the same time as there are people who are screaming out for more demands to be put on immigrants here for a higher standard, so to speak, and something so basic basic but very important as the language instruction seems to not be in place for the most part.
So a little bit about me, in 8 months, from starting the Norwegian to taking the B2 level exams for the new Norwegian test, it's very difficult to pass the writing portion because, you have to make sure the grammatic and all that. But shout out to my teachers, not only here
That's
at
great.
Stavanger, but also in Verdal. I had like a sproke praxis, just a language building up period that I did in Verdal, and they really pushed me and they helped me. I had about 6 teachers that really.
That's great.
And in 8 months, the national rate of passing for the written portion for B2 level is like under 5%, and I was able to do it on the first try. And it takes people 2-3 tries to get to B2 at that level, and I just wanted to take the highest level, Bergen test or whatever, just for my self-esteem and my piece of paper. I have this. Hey, you can't really mess with me. And,
it gives you a sense of pride to be able to master this language, or master it, at least to be able to converse in this language and make yourself understood. I tell you, that's alpha and omega when it comes to success or failure in this country.
And like you said, John, it doesn't make sense because in Denmark and especially in Finland, it's really amazing what Finland has done, and they just value education way more.
Yes.
Norway is statistically the lowest of the 4 Scandinavian countries in many fields, and they don't realize that. But Finland, for example, I think Finnish is a much more difficult language.
Absolutely.
No language is really difficult, but I just think with Finsk, it just takes a lot more time to get acclimated with.
It seems to be more foreign to an English speaker.
And even with Norwegians, but no questions barred if you're there, even as a student or as a refugee or as a skilled worker, you are immersed in language classes, and it's good because they realize that, they get it, that in order to thrive in Finnish society, you need to know Finnish. And they put that procedures, they put that system there for people. And I just don't understand why everything's already set in place here, even though, like you said, I'm really glad that you pointed out your experience, because maybe that may not be such a great idea to have it through the adult learning, because, all the refugees that do come, they're not at the same, it's not like a cookie cutter thing.
I was just going to say, they need to have different levels of that language education. When I started, I was an educated man who could read and write in a class with a bunch of people who were not educated and couldn't read and write. So
this is exactly what we're talking about, trying to take this to the parliamentary level, especially with students. They're in a university. Obviously, there's plenty of people that know Norwegian at the universities. What is stopping them, like, just to have, a 3 hours a week course or 6 hours, a week for the students at the university? Everybody's educated at that realm. It's a little different here when you're dealing with refugees in the Introductions program. I get it, but like you said, you could have benefited if you had gone to your local whatever, and been with like-minded or like-ability people.
It's just you can't. I don't want to use the word dumb it down, but that's basically what they're forced to do when you have such a wide disparity, and
spectrum,
it's I wanted to ask you, how are you experiencing this rough time with isolation and quarantine when it comes to your consulting business?
So far, it's been great because I've always been digital. I do most of my meetings on Skype, Zoom, Teams. I've got a lot of clients that, apart from the time difference, things are still normal. With the physical part here, it's one thing because we're setting up new warehouses and whatnot, but that's there. But the bulk of my clientele are from all corners of the world, and luckily, I think this period has shown us the importance of video meetings and whatnot, and it's really going to change the ball game. I think after this is all died down.
Yeah.
I think home offices are going to be pretty much the norm, and I already see that because there's really no need. Everybody,
Yeah, I would think. Yeah, I would think as I don't know, as a business owner who has a bunch of employees that sit in cubicles, whatever that business is. Let's say you're some sort of telephone service.
Yeah.
I would think that for that business owner, they have the overhead cost of the office space, right? Absolutely. Let's say you got 20 employees. You got to find a building to warehouse those 20 employees while they're working their 9 to 5. I wonder how much money I can just imagine that quite a bit of money can be saved by that business by allowing those people to work from home. And instead of paying, $5,000 a month to rent this office space, they're paying a fraction of that to give people a fancy cell phone and a headset and do their telephone work from home.
Absolutely. You could just go through a corporate partnership with Apple or Samsung.
Exactly.
Or whatever, and then with the computers, Dell or something, and then you have a VPN. So the people have to they can't just use it for personal whatever. There's so many things now that have come up in the last 2-3 years that wasn't there, let's say 15, 20 years ago. But now it's just a lot more economical. And I think going forward that this will be the norm, especially in the Western countries. And we're just going to see. So my biggest thing with my business is I've always been opposed to Chinese manufacturing. And that's just my roots, coming from America, union family, whatnot. And so I've always been telling my clients to look at other options, whether it's Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, South Korea, Japan. And I'm kind of, this corona is a blessing in disguise because we see, not apart from all the viruses that have come from outside of that have come from China the last 20 years, but you remember with the toys and the lead poisoning and the different materials, there's no quality control there. There's nothing that in my career has said, oh, I can trust Chinese products or manufacturing.
Well, here's my take on it. This man who is our president now, he ran on this slogan, "Make America Great Again." And the basis of that, the foundation of that phrase, "Make America Great Again," was taking the manufacturing away from China and putting it back in America, right? So
and those stupid hats were made in China.
Exactly. Well, but stay with me now. So he campaigns on that. Take the jobs away from China, put them back in America. Now, this virus comes up. We have a crisis, and we need more masks, more gloves. More personal protective equipment. Where is all that stuff made? It's being made in China. Okay, here is an example for that man to shine as president.
Yeah.
Acknowledge the fact that all of those things are made in China. Acknowledge the fact that you haven't done anything to bring those manufacturing jobs from China to the States, but take this opportunity now when we need, it's literally a life and death situation. We need this personal protective equipment. We need the masks and the gloves and all that stuff, and use the presidential power that he has and make companies start making that. I can't remember what it's some sort of War Powers Act. I can't remember exactly what that act is called.
But he can World War II. Yeah,
he can demand that businesses change their production lines to make products that are essential. And I don't approve of anything that man has done. I'm just going to say that. But I don't want him to fail. I want him to succeed because his success is our nation's success. And
on a lighter note, John, he's actually started that, and by all means, I've got personal ties with him. My cousin, she worked. She's like a sister to me. She actually worked for him 10 years ago. She worked for Donald and whatnot.
Did she get paid? Because he's notorious for not paying his employees.
Yeah, she got paid, but she had to work for it. We're talking 80, 100 hours a week. He's a real asshole. And it is what it is. But I do have that I have that close, what do you call 3 degrees of separation that
Right.
most people don't have.
Right.
But going back to your point, I will say on a lighter note that he has embarked on this productive production of PPE and whatnot, because one of my former clients, John Deere, shout out to them in Fuquay Varina in North Carolina, they actually stopped producing golf turbine, golf machineries, and they've been producing masks and whatnot. So they have started that. So these companies like GM or John Deere, that whatever few plants are left in America, they are actually producing equipment that is needed during this time of.
But isn't it rather superficial? Aren't these companies doing the little that they're doing of their own volition? Whatever you call that act is that allows him to force a company to do it, he hasn't invoked that yet, and the result of that is that very few companies are changing their production lines. Now, I know Governor Cuomo from New York was talking about those cotton swabs that they need. They can talk. The White House can talk all they want about testing, and that the testing procedures are so well in place and it's going so fine. But the fact is if a hospital has a test kit but they don't have a specific type of swab in order to transfer the saliva or the blood or whatever they're testing and put it into the test kit, then the test kit is useless, and that's the reality on the ground.
But the thing
it seems like he's talking a lot. He's talking a lot of shit and not enough action and not enough. We said we weren't going to cuss, and here I go.
No, but John, that's every politician. That's every president in America after FDR. They've been nothing but. I'm sorry, not FDR. I'm sorry, I meant after like Truman.
Yeah,
they're all just blowing smoke up our behinds.
Of course, that's what politicians do. But this is a different. This is a different situation, though.
Yeah, absolutely. But I will say this, though. If we really want to talk about, Trump's a hypocrite. We all know that every president's been a hypocrite on one way or another. But if we really want to put the blame on someone, I hate to say it for those that are progressive or diehard liberals, but it is Clinton's fault because, not only with NAFTA, he also declared China most favored nation trade status during his tenure. And it absolutely opened the floodgates. And during his time, between 98 and 2001, you saw so many unions just crumble. You saw so many
fell
jobs
apart.
leave, and people don't know that. And I'm like, y'all worshiping and praising this man because of his personality and whatnot, and he's really not that great, And I'm so sick and tired of him, his wife, and the Bush family, and this. And I'm like, and that's why Trump won. They don't want another Clinton or another, cops are going to come in here and whatnot. And
I get that.
Same thing.
I get that people wanted to see a change. I wanted to see a change too. I'm tired of the typical Washington BS. All the lies, and they misrepresent themselves just so they can get elected. Everybody's tired of that. But good God, Donald Trump. I mean.
What?
Really?
he got the golden ticket through the failed availability of the failure and the availability of choices. But going back to Clinton, I mean, every time he was over there, he was very, very open with the Chinese government. And this is a country, mind you, that shot its own students. So me being a student right now, imagine I could have been shot.
Think about it,
in Tiananmen Square in '89, which was coincidentally the year I was born. And I just don't understand, why are we in bed with this country that does not value rights, people, environment?
I'd like to see a president, and Trump is not that president. I would like to see a president who stands up to China and forces some change. Not someone who talks about it and puts a slogan on a hat, but someone who actually implements some sort of concrete policy where we can see that there is a change. Again, here is a golden opportunity. You talk about a golden ticket. Here's a golden ticket for our current president to do something about the manufacturing. He's not doing anything about the manufacturing. There are individual companies, as you mentioned, who are doing some changes and starting to produce the things that people are sitting in their homes making gowns and masks. And whatnot.
I thought that was great. They're making their own stuff on Etsy.
Absolutely, but I would think that this is the time for America to have an epiphany like we did during World War II, where everybody, people were,
guns and butter.
Yeah, guns, butter, and bullets.
That's right.
Here's an opportunity. Here is a golden ticket, and he's not taking it. And I have to wonder why. I have my own thoughts about why, but I have to wonder why.
Going back to your point, John, about finding a leader that will stand up to China, it's not going to happen. There have been, and you know what? Every other leader, especially in Africa and Pakistan, which I do know quite about, they're succumbing to the grip and the wrath of Chinese diplomacy.
What's that all about?
There's China. And this is something for you to kind of research on your own, but there's something called the technology corridor that is a big multi-billion-dollar project established by the Chinese government to send goods from China to a port called Gwadar, the Gwadar port in Pakistan, which would cut logistics times, will cut shipping times and cargo freight shipping times literally in half from, but this is pre-COVID. So now everything, who knows what will happen if people will trust Chinese manufacturing. But their initial plan was to create this technology corridor and they've already set up their language schools in Pakistan. They own a lot of debt. Like they go to Africa, they're in Kenya, they're in Uganda, they're all over the poor African nations, and they're building the roads, and they're coming at you like, oh, we're going to develop your countries because you guys couldn't develop them yourselves. But we'll cover all this stuff, but 20, 30 years from now, we're possibly going to own you guys.
See, they're thinking the long game. See, China is very smart, but they're not smarter than us. We're just lazy.
Exactly.
We're arrogant. We're arrogant and lazy.
And complacent. Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Not only if you're talking about Norwegians, obviously, but also, of course, Americans. And that's what I don't understand. These Western nations need to wake up.
Yeah, when I say we, I was talking about Americans.
Yeah, I'm saying all over.
Yeah. My thing is that there's no reason why China should have the position of dominance over America. Yeah. We have the technological minds. We have the apparatus in place. Of course, it's a little broken, it's a little unstable. We can fix that apparatus and get back to our production capabilities and our innovation capabilities that we had from World War II and going forward until, whenever all that stuff started disappearing. It's,
It's a mindset thing,
It is.
And people, for your American listeners, and I try to tell Norwegians this as well, you got to figure out, you guys got to take a step back and realize, how was America founded? It was founded by committing every crime known to man. We're talking, pillaging, larceny, theft, murder, you name it. Backdoor deals that obviously screwed one individual or party compared to those that, and that's the premise of America. And I tell people this, America is not that great. They're just, there've been a few minds, there've been great things that have come from America. But if you look at the history of America, it's horrible. It's not good. It's a relatively new country.
Yeah.
And there's still issues with equality and wages, gender equality and whatnot. I mean, America still has not had a female head of the state. Even Pakistan and Bangladesh, countries that are laughed at, in India that are laughed at for being whatever, having problems,
backwards and undeveloped.
And we've had female heads of state.
Yeah.
We've had female heads of the nations who have been strong, intelligent women. And where does America have? America just got their first black president after 200 years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a real shame, and people they're so blinded by all this facade. There's a facade, and they just don't get it, And I'm just trying to point it out.
People can't tell me that in America's 200-year plus history, there's only been one black man who was qualified to be president. Mm-hmm. Or there was only one woman, Hillary Clinton, who was qualified to almost become president. They can't tell me that that's the first and only time that has ever been the situation. So what is it that has kept those things from happening in the past? Just go through America's history and there's the answer. I love my country. I love America. I'm very, what I consider to be patriotic. But in that patriotism is my right to criticize and question.
Absolutely.
Because within that criticism and within those questions, those questions is a desire to have a better country.
No. You're a rational human being. You see the realism. You're not just,
right.
Blindly believing what, And America, unfortunately, like George Carlin said, has been sold out. It has been sold to the corporations, and it's not capitalism anymore. It is corporatism.
Yep.
And capitalism is okay. It's healthy. It has to be regulated.
Sure.
And then that's where the big dialogues and the debates come with the economics and whatnot and whatnot. But I think you're never going to have that balance, and Norway can afford to have that, which is why I respect this country. I respect the government. I respect the people, the system. It's very open and honest. Very, very. There's no. It's completely transparent, and you can only have that. You can have that only in certain societies. America would never work. There's just too many people, too many things going on, too many problems.
There's a trust here in Norway. There is a trust of the government that doesn't exist in America, and that trust is in place here because the government hasn't screwed people over.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and the government can't be bought by corporations.
Exactly.
Like in America, America's the only country in the world, other than maybe India, that the corporations rule what's going on. And going back to what you're saying, America's history and all. Like, for example, 200 years, you can only find one black individual to run this country. And when blacks, basically built this country. And I just read an article yesterday, and I didn't know this. There's not one Hispanic. Think about this, John. You like sports. There's not one Hispanic that owns any part of any professional sport team. And now they're raising heads because there's a rumor that J-Lo and A-Rod are thinking about acquiring part of the New York Mets.
Oh, really?
And I was just blown away. TMZ reported it, and then also Peter King was kind of thinking about talking about it on Fox Sports, and it's really a shame. And I went and looked at it, and of course we're all still mourning the tragic death of Kobe. But if you look at it, how many black athletes that make up over 70% of the big two sports?
I tell you what,
there's only MJ, Shaq, Magic, and I think maybe one other.
What I was waiting for, and I just wish they would have had the guts to do it. I know with all of the controversy around Colin Kaepernick and his protest, I know there were more NFL players, black and white, who supported what he was doing. And I just know that if a certain number of the black players would have supported him and I don't know, backed out, refused to play or something, the NFL would have fallen apart, or they would have changed their stance on that whole protest issue. And having that, and seeing that kind of influence and power and control by the black players whether it's the NBA or the NFL, you got to question, at least raise an eyebrow to the fact that there are so few owners in those two sports. And then looking at baseball, as many Hispanics as there are playing baseball, professional baseball, where are the owners? Where are they in the corporate structure?
The power stays within, and it's passed generationally, and I'm so sick and tired of that. And that's been America, whether it's, I don't know, I just don't know how to beat around the bush, but every commissioner is from a certain lineage. Every owner is usually from a certain group,
Right.
I don't know if I'm at liberty to call them out.
Say it.
But it's all WASPs and Jews. It's just how it is, man. I mean, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants from before,
See, my thing is I don't, and this isn't about wanting any kind of a handout. James Brown famously said, I don't want you to give me anything. Just let me walk through the door and get it myself.
Exactly.
In other words, level the playing field, give equal opportunity.
Yeah.
Give equal opportunity.
It's a shame. And that's something that is non-existent in America, which I think West Europe to an extent has, which is why I came over here. My family's in Germany, and you just don't have that level playing field. You have that class hierarchy.
Yeah.
So I kind of joke with people, Britain, they really wanted to do that here, but they did it in America. So they ultimately got what they wanted. And then it was a match made in heaven when they, conquered India and all that, because it all stemmed from their casteism and classism and all that nonsense.
That's where it started. Yeah.
We can go on and on, man. So.
Oh man. Well, I kind of make a living out of making fun of Norway. It's a big part of my stand-up comedy act, making fun of Norway and stuff. But I do that in fun. This is a great country. I think America could learn a few things from Norway. And I'm not saying Norway is better. For me, there's no place like home. I'm constantly homesick. I miss my country. I miss my hometown.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
But I think Norway is doing a few things right that America could learn from.
We hope.
I think so.
If the politicians get their head out of their asses and actually give 2 cents, they give a dang about the actual people. I mean, well, that's the issue. That's the disconnect.
Things like unions, I don't know, some of these same people that I hear screaming negativity about so-called socialism, those are the same people that have a job where they would benefit greatly by being unionized. I love the worker protections that are in place by law here in Norway. And I think it would be revolutionary. It would change people's lives literally if they could have a job in the States with the same workers' rights that we have in Norway. There's so much unnecessary suffering.
The biggest question about this whole thing, and it's going to change, but the biggest, most important question we must ask, which is why Europe has always been at the forefront. It's always evolved a lot more than other nations, even America. What is required for a functional society? Jobs, some sort of, established parameters about, security and having a good working environment and being able to, because if you don't have taxes, you can't pay for anything.
Right.
And, you need jobs to do this. So it's part of an ecosystem.
Right.
And America used to have this, but now I don't know why everybody sold out. The upper management sold out, and it's a train wreck. It's spiraling out of control, and it's going to get worse. I forecast these things for my clients, and I'm telling people, get ready to pick up a new skill or something. Learn 3-4 different things, learn new languages. I'm always telling people to learn something new because you're not going to be able to go work, punch the clock for 30 years. I mean, that was the case 5 years ago.
Well, I tell you, it's going to be interesting to see how we come out of this. I tell you, I was looking at the news today and those long lines. There's people waiting in line for 6 hours. They're sleeping in their cars overnight to get in line for 6 hours to get food handed out to them. That breaks my heart. Now, I don't have, luckily, so far, everyone in my family back in the States is doing fine.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
They're blessed so far. But to see those, I don't know, there's something wrong with that. There's just something wrong with that. And I sit here in Norway, safe and secure with tons of comfort, a lot of social programs that are in place to keep me and my family and my friends living a decent life, even though this isolation is going on because of the virus. And then I see the total opposite happening in the States, and it just there's something wrong with that. There's something wrong with that.
Mm-hmm. And it's a shame. Like you said, it's a shame, man.
Yeah. Well, time is out.
Yeah.
You are a busy working man. I am I'm going to try and be lazy for the rest of the day. I tell you, I've been putting the hours in the last 3 days, but today I'm going to try and find a good position on the couch and stay there.
I don't blame you, man. I'm going to go try fish, man. If the weather stays this way, I'm going to go try and fish up here. So.
Oh man, it's been beautiful this last week. Just beautiful weather. Fantastic. Yeah. And I'm going to not enjoy any of that today.
Well, I appreciate you having me, John. It's been great talking about a wide gamut of issues. I look forward to enlightening, more people and me learning a few things as well.
Well,
in the future.
Aaron, you have an open invitation here. We will be talking again on this podcast. I want to wish you a lot of luck with everything you're doing with the International Student Union. I hope you climb up the ranks there and exert a little bit of influence. Stay positive and hang in there and keep doing what you're doing with your business as well, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man. And I hope you have more guests and really open the spectrum for this going forward. And I think podcasts are very important to share knowledge and to connect people from both ends.
Thanks, man. I've had a wide range of guests so far, and I'm actually booked. I'm booked up for the next couple of weeks. So this is, things are going well. I'm excited going forward, and as I say, you've got an open invitation. So this is not the last time you'll be a guest. I will definitely ask you again, and I hope you come on again.
I hope the listeners want me on again. So
I'm sure they will. We touched on a couple different topics here, but we touched on them in a way that I think is going to open some thought in people's heads. That's what I want.
Just a dialogue, we just need a dialogue.
Yeah.
I appreciate it again, John. Yep.
My pleasure. You have a great day, Aaron. Thanks a lot,
you
man.
as well.
Okay.
Thanks, brother.
Bye. All right, everybody. That's Arun Siva. He's cerebral kind of guy, and that's the kind of guy we want to talk to. Thanks a lot for listening to this episode of the Coming Home Podcast with John Allen. Thanks a lot, everybody. Be blessed. Be kind. Bye, everybody.
I'm coming home. I'm coming home. Yes, I am. Yes, I'm coming home. I'm coming home. Yes, I am, my Lord. Oh, my Lord. Lord, I'm coming home.